Welcome to another episode of Steve and Max. I'm Steve.
I'm Max.
And today we're going to talk about, is Wrath of Khan overrated? Max, I'll let you first give your opinion.
Sure, well let me start off with a quote from Dave Kerr of Chicago Reader. If only director Nicholas Meyer had grasped the implications of his tale more fully and enthusiastically, this might have become a classic piece of cornball science fiction poetry. But as it stands, the tepid acting and one-set claustrophobia take a heavy toll. Now, I'll agree that Star Trek II is a very good movie. Certainly coming on the heels of Star Trek I, which was trying to be different, and this one was trying to be more American movie plottish. It certainly is an enjoyable film, but it really has a lot of problems with it, and I feel a lot of just taking the audience for granted, that we would just accept flimsy premises and plot motivations, and just the whole thing is set up. It ruins the suspension of disbelief for me. It feels like a movie, not like a tale.
Okay. Well, since we never agree, since I hate everything about you, no. Obviously, I thought that Wrath of Khan wasn't overrated, and I will read you a quote from Janet Maslin, New York Times. She sounds hot. No, I was kidding.
She probably was 20 years ago
Yeah.
when she wrote it.
Okay. Here comes a sequel that's worth its salt. The second Star Trek movie is swift, droll, and adventurous, not to mention appealingly gadget-happy. Sounds like a total American movie. It's everything the first one should have been and wasn't. So I totally agree with that. I also I'm coming from a perspective when I said that Wrath of Khan isn't overrated, from a perspective of just someone who enjoys a good sci-fi movie. I don't consider myself a Star Trek buff. I mean, in a previous episode we talked about how I thought that Star Trek was better than Star Wars, but I'm not an expert on either franchise by any means. You know, there are plenty of people out there who could totally talk circles around me, and in this very room, and is not afraid to be a cocky asshole about it. But just as a sci-fi fan, I just thought that this was one of the only older movies that I really enjoyed, and so I don't think it's overrated.
Like I said, you can enjoy it. Like I said, it's an okay movie, but the opening scene is a middle finger to the audience, where we have a young Kirstie Alley looking very nice, commanding the Enterprise as it tries to rescue the stranded vessel, the Kobayashi Maru. And it's the entire crew of the Enterprise, and except in the captain's chair instead of Kirk is this young female Vulcan who is basically, she loses the ship, everyone dies. And then it's haha, it was just a training exercise. Now, these senior staff members on board for this training exercise have been in Starfleet for 20 years. They were young when they went on that 5-year mission, and now they're all middle-aged and still in Starfleet. I mean, I can understand one or two of them becoming a trainer, but that all of them, and the way that the scene is set up is just to get at the audience, haha, just messing with you. What the hell?
I see your point, but I actually like the way that they open up the scene. At first I was iffy about it, if I thought that was sort of a throwaway thing, haha, we got you. But I like how they kept coming back to it, and each time, Spock was saying, this is my version of the Kobayashi, what do they call it, the tactic or scenario?
Just the Kobayashi Maru.
Yeah.
That's the name of the test.
Yeah. When he sacrificed himself, he said that was his version.
His answer.
His answer to it.
Because as you all know, it's supposed to be an unsolvable problem. It's supposed to be, everyone's gonna die, and how you deal with that.
Right, and Kirk, the way he cheated on it, the way hot Kirstie Alley dealt with it. I mean, each of those was sort of an embodiment of what like a
Oh
metaphor.
no! Like I said, it's a good film. And, like
they kept
I
bringing
agree
it
with
back
that.
too. It's not something that they talked about in the first few minutes and then just like.
No, and certainly the Kobayashi Maru has really entered the wide canon of Star Trek lore. That Kirk cheating on it was even in the first movie
for
and
the reboot.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about that.
I like that movie.
No. We're not talking about that. Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan.
That movie was what got me to
Okay, another time.
Okay.
Wrath of Khan. So, another point is Khan's character in the episode of the original series, Space Seed, was very, debonair, a little bit enigmatic, very powerful. You can even say, virile. Like, he seduced one of his crew members who became his wife. But anyway, the point is that Khan was this very powerful figure, very interesting figure in the episode from the original series.
Right.
But then in this, he's very one-dimensional, or two-dimensional. The real issue is that I understand what they were going for. The death scene where he's quoting Herman Melville is done fantastically and beautifully. I mean, that seems to me, because also it's like, if you're not fully paying attention, you miss it, how he starts the quote a few scenes earlier and finishes it, after like, a minute or two, because they keep cutting away.
Yeah.
But my point is, he is just trying to kill Kirk, and it's like his crewman, Preston, I think is his name, but one of the other superhumans,
the younger blonde guy.
Yeah, is constantly, saying what the audience would say, which is, "You've won. All you have to do is just leave." And he doesn't. And I understand the whole thing about vengeance and stuff. He killed his wife, but I mean, it seems like he went from a character that was very intelligent to a character who was very dumb.
I don't know if it's dumb, because he was fully aware of what he was doing. Like, he was like, you could tell that he was like, I know this is not what I should be doing, but I'm going to do it anyway because I really hate this guy. I mean, okay, Kirk marooned him on a planet that blew up 15 years ago.
Yes, Alpha Ceti 6.
I thought it was 5, and then they went to look for 6.
No, it had to be 6 because 5 blew up and altered the course of 6, and they thought it was 5.
Anyway,
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So one of them, right?
Yeah, the one they weren't on blew up.
Yeah.
The other one changed its position in the solar system. No one noticed. And also, I'm sorry, but no one wrote a memo that hey, there's this inhabited planet full of superhumans. Because I mean, what if they repaired their ship and went that they were surprised to find people there, and they didn't do a look around, say, hey, this is a 7-planet solar system. There's only 6 planets.
Well, so let's go back real quick to the fact the point of him being two-dimensional.
Sure.
I thought that vengeance is like an emotion that can overpower intelligence, like other emotions, and they just wanted to show that he is aware of all this. He's still intelligent. I mean, he shows that he has tactical intelligence. Him and Kirk are going back and forth throughout the whole movie. That was a big part of the movie. But he also showed that what made him lose to Kirk was the fact that he couldn't just accept winning. He had to destroy Kirk, not just win. And vengeance does that to you, even if you are intelligent.
No, I mean, I agree with you, and certainly that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed it. I just think it went a little too far, because his character was supposed to be like a Hitler, from the past, who had taken over the world in the 1990s and was the product of selective breeding to make this new generation of superhumans. And so he should have been self-aware enough to realize, he's this great political figure, leader of nations, but he does not know ship-to-ship combat tactics. And going up against a guy where Khan has spent no time in the captain's chair.
We're talking about from the 1990s, if he doesn't know all the tactical things that comes with spaceships, I mean, that's understandable.
No, but that's my point, is that he should have been self-aware of that. That Kirk is going to have the advantage in aside from the surprise and the false flag tactics or whatever it was, whatever you call it, with the early ship encounter where he catches him by surprise with an ambush.
Yeah.
Outside of that, Khan didn't stand a chance against Kirk, simply because Kirk has had 20 plus years of combat experience in a spaceship, and Khan has had 0.
Yeah. So what's your point about that, though?
That Khan should have been self-aware enough to realize that going into the nebula and going on equal footing with the Enterprise would have been better, because equal footing was to Kirk's advantage because Kirk had superior tactics.
Right.
It was absolutely to Khan's disadvantage.
Well, at the time, initially when they first confronted each other, they weren't on equal footing. Khan had the advantage.
Right, he had the whatever of surprise.
Yeah, he their shields weren't up. He was able to shoot at them.
Right, and so that was his the way he came to power in the 1990s, the way he took over the Enterprise, 20 years before this episode, or 10 years, I forget what it is. But the point is that that's his one trick.
Okay, so you're saying that part of the reason why the movie's overrated is because Khan wasn't as believable as this super intelligent, genetically enhanced human.
It's almost as if I want to say he's not compelling as a villain. He's got a lot of interesting elements to him, but none of them come to the forefront in that movie unless you've seen the episode. If all you've seen is that movie, what is there of it? I mean, I think you said you haven't seen the episode.
Yeah.
So did you find Khan interesting and compelling?
Yeah.
I mean, he killed my wife.
Well,
that's it.
No, he killed my wife. He stranded me on this planet with my survivors, and he pretty much doomed me to die, even though he said that he was, going to give me a chance to live. 15 years later, that can build up a lot of resentment.
Yeah, but for such blind rage that you're basically looking to crash your car into the other guy's car.
Okay, think of it like this way. Okay, Khan is like a sports player who has everything. Let's say a LeBron James, right? Someone comes along, but he's basically at the top of his game, and everyone adores him. He has everything. From that, having everything taken away, and then 15 years of that, and there's one person you can blame for that. You could go other ways, but that is a real possibility.
No, but see, that's kind of what I'm saying, though, is that it wasn't Kirk who took all that away from him. Although Kirk is an understandable representative of the authorities that overthrew him in the 1990s, put him on the Botany Bay, and sent him off into cryogenic slumber for all eternity. Kirk was the one who unfroze him and was against him. So I still feel as though...
I mean, the final sentence where Kirk sentenced him to that planet. Because he sentenced him in a way that was from what I gathered, was supposed to be sort of a benevolent way of saying, hey, you're too dangerous to be around us, around Earth, or around any
too dangerous to be trusted.
Yeah, but we're gonna let you do your own thing. But then he's saying, oh, you didn't really. This was all sort of a BS move. You left me on a planet that was gonna get
die.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
okay. No, I still feel as though his blind rage makes him less interesting to me, the viewer.
Okay.
Because I definitely enjoy the more methodical, the more calculating ones. And I can understand that, you can play off someone's emotion, which Kirk does in every scene. It's just Khan becomes such a one-trick pony in that movie. But let's talk about something. I just want to talk briefly about the cinematography.
Sure, yeah.
Because it was kind of they did the opposite in the Star Trek reboot, where instead of bright lights in everyone's eyes, every scene was super dark. That on the Enterprise, it was amazing that they weren't tripping over the furniture. I mean, how can you operate in those conditions? It was only when they turned on the emergency lighting that you could see stuff. And it's why isn't the emergency lighting the regular lighting?
But in the Star Trek original show, is the lighting like that?
No, it looked fine. And I think actually one of the reasons why it was like that is because this was a very low budget one, because the first one was big budget, lost a lot of money. They managed to convince them to make a second one, and they were using like the original Star Trek sets. And I think part of the problem is because movie film is higher definition, that you could really see like the seams and like the glue and stuff, and so that's part of the reason why they went with dark.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But-
I did read that they were using a lot of the same sets, a lot of the same like models, a lot of the same like special effects.
Right, and so I guess, that answers my own question and stuff, and if they accepted that, they got to make the movie and they had to make that compromise to make it.
Right.
But it is something that's very common in, very much so, science fiction, where you have these really just dark ships, and you really have to wonder, how do people really work in those conditions? I mean, imagine working at night all the time without, floodlights.
I think that's fair, but I thought that there were some cool scenes, like when they were in that nebula, that looked pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, special effects, especially when you take it back, like, hey, this was...
Yeah, oh yeah, looking at the context of obviously, yeah.
But also, okay, so back to plot then. Kirk meets his son for the first time, and it wasn't even that he's like, oh my god, why didn't you tell me I had a son? He's like, that's David? Like, or is that David? Like, what an asshole father! That he knew he had a son and made absolutely zero attempt to contact him. I can understand, hey, the mother could have been a real B-word, and be like, listen, you left us, you left me pregnant, you don't get to have any contact with him. Fine, I accept that. The mother inhibited him from having contact with his son. The guy is a doctor, so he clearly, graduated high school, went to college, went to doctoral program, and then got a job. And Kirk, fully aware that his son was out there, just didn't care. It's like, oh, hey, how's it going?
My impression when I watched the movie was that he found out very recently that he had a son, like within like the last year. Like it just like it didn't seem like something that he knew for a long time. Because in another scene, he's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" Blah blah blah. So it seemed like
okay, maybe I missed that then.
It seemed like something very recent. I mean, that was the impression I got just from watching it, and of course I don't have your extensive knowledge of the episode, but that in this case it might, in some ways it might help me because but I do feel like maybe we can talk about something else besides nitpicking the unbelievability of characters. I feel like we've covered that.
Sure. And certainly, I also don't even want to talk about the continuity issues, because that's something that even Gene Roddenberry said from a very early stage. He doesn't care about continuity. That's why in some episodes they can time travel back to the past on a routine fact-finding mission to the 1960s. I mean,
yeah. When I watched this movie, like when I said when I was thinking, is this overrated or not? I was thinking from the perspective of, can I just enjoy this movie as it is for what it is? Like I didn't try to think about like, if the mythos ties in or like,
no,
yeah.
I understand, but the whole thing is, I mean, I can agree it's a good, enjoyable film.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is there's a lot of people out there that feel that it's the strongest of, certainly the original cast movies, and some to this day still say it's better than anyone since.
Okay.
And I really disagree with that. And so, I mean, if we're asking, is it overrated? I mean, look, it's a fine film.
I look at it more of just a science fiction movie of its time. Is it something that still can hold water as a science fiction movie of its time? And I think it does, because I still enjoy it. And just to let you know, I tried watching Star Trek, like the regular show, like
the original series.
Yeah, original series, like 4 or 5 times, and I kept stopping because I was like, I can't get into this. I tried watching was it First Con? Like some other like Next Generation movie a couple of times. Like I'd keep like starting in the first few minutes, I'd get like tired of it right away. Even Star Trek The Next Generation, like besides the Q episodes, it took me a while to like fully get into it. But this one, like maybe because like you said is made more for an American popcorn flick audience, I could get into right away. I didn't have to like, I didn't feel like my feet were dragging watching it.
No, definitely, because I mean the plot is very basic and straightforward. There's no real twists or turns. You can see it from start to finish, basically within the first 10 minutes on how it's going to play out. and there's nothing unexpected. There's no turnabouts, Oh, sorry about that.
Now I'm smiling because like as you were like talking about how I was gonna play, I just keep thinking in my head like, and then there's that scene where he just goes, "Khan, Khan." Wait, there.
Khan.
No, wait, no.
Khan.
And actually, what I did find funny, can we talk about the acting for a little bit? I mean,
Sure. Let's.
Yes.
Because this is in my favor.
Well, so there were like at least 2 or 3 scenes where a line was repeated for no reason, and I found it hilarious. Like this movie would be an awesome drinking game. Like when you hear a line being repeated, take a shot. Whenever you hear like whenever you see like horrible acting, take a shot.
We don't want to kill anyone. Because Ricardo Montalban, amazing actor, fantastic. Like each line of dialogue of his was like honey being dripped in my ears. I mean, that guy was fantastic. And that guy was super ripped until like he died in his 80s. Like that was his real chest. He had real man boobies. Like
I like how like they cut his like shirt to be like, look at my man boobies.
Yeah. So I mean, Ricardo Montalban was fantastic, and Leonard Nimoy, even though it was very dry and deadpan, that was his character.
Yeah.
Even Kirstie Alley, she was okay.
I thought she was fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
exactly how I would describe her.
Yeah, it was weird seeing her that like hot. I was like that girl's pretty hot, and I was like, oh wait, that's Kirstie Alley.
Yeah, but anyway, William Shatner, this is probably one of his weakest performances. Certainly, the way in which he's delivering his dialogue compared to other Star Trek films and the original series. I don't know what was going on with him.
I don't know if it was. I mean,
he was off. Like in his delivery.
I just felt like from someone who's not a Star Trek like the original series expert, I just felt like it was uneven. Like there were times where I was like, he's really actually like nailing it, and there are other times where I'm like, this is funny.
And maybe part of the issue there was just with the director, because as you saw with the film before and the later films, you get much more of the cast directing the movies and themselves, just because they're so much more familiar with the genre and the material than this Meyer guy,
So you thought that that his acting really brought down the movie, or could have, or made it not as good.
I mean, before we had the internet, Shatner yelling Khan was a meme.
But it's awesome.
But it's not.
So coming from someone who's looking to enjoy a movie, have a good time, just seeing that scene was thoroughly enjoyable.
Because you laughed at it, and you weren't supposed to laugh at it. You were supposed to feel the drama.
I did feel some because that was like part of that whole like straight up beef between like Khan and like what's his face, Kirk. Like that was like the big speech versus speech scene where like
oh yeah.
So
Montalban will talk on for 5 minutes, and Shatner, Kirk responds, God!
No, well before that, to give him credit, that was the final thing. He did say a few eloquent things where he was like, listen, he was trying to like, he's like, listen man, like, you think you got everything, but you don't have me. He was just basically trying to bait him in, and he was like, So he was like, and he was doing it in a pretty like the way he was saying it, I thought was good, like the line delivery.
But also that was another moment of just ruining the suspension of disbelief that Khan could teleport the Genesis device out of there and leaves Kirk, and they explain it. He explains his reasoning, and then it comes back to bite him, and it's just everything that Khan does and everything that Kirk does seems to me to be necessitated to keep the plot moving. That they're not making decisions based on what their characters would do. They're doing what the script calls them to do, and that I felt that for a lot of the choices that they made.
Okay, I mean I didn't really feel that for the most part. I do see what you're saying about Khan.
Okay, well I mean let's talk about when Kirk approaches the other ship initially, where he knows that something is going on here, and he knows that Khan. I think he knows by that point that Khan is involved, and just the other ship isn't responding. And
I don't think he
Savick
knows that Khan is involved at that point.
He
He
doesn't?
knows that something's up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He got the distress call
Yeah.
from his ex-lover,
Mhm.
and so he's going to investigate. He doesn't know that Khan is involved.
He just knew
He just knows something's up.
He knew that she was saying, "Why are you making me give up the Genesis
device?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of confusion on
Yeah.
his part,
Mhm.
but that in and of itself, shows like impersonator going on or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So when he arrives there, and there's a Starfleet vessel. And it's not responding, and Savick says, standard procedures, if we can't establish communications, we raise shields.
Mhm.
And he's like, no, let's get in closer.
Yeah.
And that is how Khan is able to lay the trap and ambush him.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you on that point. I thought that was kind of another suspension of disbelief problem.
And also, when the earwig crawls out of Chekhov's ear.
Yeah, why does it just crawl out and then the other dude has to kill himself?
Right.
I thought about that too.
And, well, not just that, but also that Kirk immediately shoots it.
Uh-huh.
And I was just thinking to myself, now if this was an episode or a movie in which it was like a replicant and like his soul or his mind was trapped in the wig, the worm, then his character would be like, no, don't step on it, don't shoot it. We have to check it out. And so it's one of those things where it's like he shot it because we, the audience, had seen that was the evil thing. And so, to me, that's part of what ruins it, is where the characters are either overly insightful or totally blind to what's going on in order to advance the plot.
Those are all fair points.
And why did the black guy have to shoot himself?
Well, my question is more like, why did the worm just come out of Chekhov? That seemed more of the aberration to me, more than the guy having to shoot himself.
Well, I mean, it's like Chekhov was the one who knew Kirk and was really friendly with him. And I feel terrible, I can't remember the character or the actor's name, because that actor has been in other stuff that I know. But I can't remember, so we'll just call him the black guy. Because, the black guy always gets killed in science fiction movies. But anyway, he's like, no, can't kill Kirk, must kill self. He's never met Kirk, wouldn't he just drive for self-preservation? At least have the Chekhov reaction that...
But isn't he also a soldier, basically, essentially?
Yeah, but at the same time, he doesn't have the personal relationship with Kirk that would be like, I'll kill myself before I kill you, sir. He doesn't know him.
Before I kill my commanding officer.
He wasn't. He was a higher ranking officer.
Yeah, higher ranking officer.
But still, I mean, I don't know. That once again ruined the suspension of disbelief for me. Where it's like, I can understand them resisting and fighting. Why couldn't they do that when they were slaughtering the innocent scientists? That they were flaying the station alive.
Well,
wouldn't that have been a good time to shoot
doing
yourself?
It, or was it
Well,
Khan and his?
Well, we don't know. They were left in the storage locker. But certainly, I mean, Khan did say that the thing will cause madness before you die, which apparently it doesn't.
So, okay, so suspension of disbelief, that's a problem. Acting, that's a problem. I mean, is there anything else? Because I feel like you could go on and on about there are
nitpicking those points.
Yeah.
So is there another point that kind of brings it down? Well, I will.
We also talked about some of the special effects.
Yeah.
I mean, or some of the sets not being.
But we explained that that's low budget reasons.
But
it's
still
a drawback.
Yeah.
But you especially when you know that, as a viewer, you have to give them respect for getting the film made.
Yeah.
And kind of be like, okay, I accept that this is the compromise that you knew would look bad, but you had to do in order to get it made. So I can respect that and drop that. Well, I will admit that the script, while the narrative I felt was flawed, the content, the actual words, for most of it was really great. I thought it was very well written. Certainly in a lot of parts, better written than acted.
I actually really enjoyed all the lines, all the quotes that they had, all hit home. The fact that they the Kobayashi Maru, keep forgetting the name, like circles back in the way that it does, and how like each character talks about it in a different way. I thought that was really brilliant. What was that final quote that that they read for Spock's funeral, and they also say for his birthday, for Kirk's birthday? I thought that was a good quote that they used. Yeah, I thought the script was very good, actually.
Okay.
I keep thinking about the con.
Yeah.
Like, con!
Well, I just also want to take a point back to, and there'll be a simple response for this, I know, but I just want to point out for those of you who have watched our other conversation about Star Trek versus Star Wars. So, in the beginning of the film, McCoy gets a bottle of Romulan ale, and he knows someone, because it's illegal, who will run the neutral zone and bring him a case every now and again. Without currency, why? Like, you know, you're breaking the law, first of all, but also that aside, why is this guy delivering him cases of Romulan ale? I mean, if McCoy's not paying him, why is it worth the risk?
So, I'm going to say something, I haven't said it up to this point, but, like, I heard about this, you know, Nostalgia Critic?
Nostalgia Critic? No.
Okay, so he's a guy who makes videos about
Nostalgia.
Nostalgic stuff. But he made a really good point. When is like suspension of disbelief? Like, when is it a problem when you have problems with suspension of disbelief? And he was saying the problem isn't when there are problems within of the thing does not holding together, especially in science fiction, because that happens so often. Like, you can't think of everything in a movie.
Oh, yeah.
The problem comes when it doesn't become enjoyable anymore. And I felt like all those points that you say, I agree with, but none of them took away from my enjoyment in a way where it's like, this is so much that I can't enjoy this anymore. I didn't feel, and another reason why I didn't feel that way, I didn't think there were holes that were vital to the plot. If you're saying this hole is like what the plot is about, then I'm like, okay.
Right, and really, like I'm saying, you know, plot holes, you know,
like world holes or like universe holes.
Yeah, that stuff can all be explained away and overlooked. Mm-hmm. My real problem with the film was just that the characters' decision making seemed to be predetermined by the script, not organically flowing from their character backgrounds and observations. And so that's really, for me, what the suspension of disbelief fell apart, was just that feeling that he wouldn't do that, you know. It's just
the only time I felt that way, like the like we've already talked about the con stuff, like why he might get to that point.
Yeah.
I really agreed with you on the, Kirk not raising his shields at that point, but that's the only thing I could really think of. Like other stuff, like you could kind of, at least from someone who's not an expert, like I could be like, okay, I could see why they would do this or that. May not be the best decision, but there's, given the circumstances, given their mental state of mind, emotional state of mind, like I can see why they might do that. So, is there anything else that you feel like you had a problem with the movie that made it?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, because I could talk on ends about the Genesis device and how, like, no way, whatever, but no, I think I kind of raised all my big problems with the film. Like I said, the other stuff, the little stuff, especially when it comes to science fiction,
right.
You have to remember that science fiction isn't necessarily always supposed to be believable. It's supposed to be a bit fantastic.
It's supposed to be also like, what is it doing? Is it supposed to be give you action? Is it supposed to make you think? Is it supposed to there's different purposes to it too.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just like the show Farscape had this great episode where this, not villain, but this character of the week had this duplicate gun that whoever he shot, he made a duplicate of, and basically split the person into two, and they were basically the same, and he did this because he was a cannibal and would eat people and stuff. But that's like high science fiction.
Yeah.
And so something like the Genesis device is high science fiction, where we can't be like, oh, this wouldn't work as X, Y, and Z. It's like, no.
It's almost like fantasy.
Right.
Yeah.
No, science fiction is just a more modern take on the fantasy genre.
Right.
Where it used to be in like the 1800s, they would write, or even earlier than that, they would write about, you know, the Middle East as this exotic location, and just because it was this unexplored, the final frontier even says it, where it was just all about going out to the frontier and what happens when you leave civilization and encounter fantastic creatures and creations. And I will say, one of the things that I do love about Star Trek's 2, 3 is that there's no god creature, because like the other movies are all about entities that are far beyond human comprehension and understanding, which was a recurrent theme in the TV show, the original series, and it gets annoying. Like Q was awesome, and Q was the singular one in the Next Generation, kind of as a throwback and a wink and a nod to audience members, especially because he was so snarky. But it was also just that it's very frustrating when so many of the plots, like half the original cast movies, deal with these uncomprehensible alien entities. Khan was a very human villain with a very human motivation. As we discussed, you know, his motivation does make sense. I just felt that he was going too far with it. Of course, my wife has never been killed. I've never been marooned on a planet that was a verdant paradise and got turned to ash.
I mean, and too far with that emotion. I don't know. That's the one emotion where you probably would go too far.
Right, and so, I can give it that because, like I said, I enjoy the film.
So we've got two iconic characters. We've got Khan and we've got Kirk, right? We've got some pretty cool like cinematography with the special effects, especially for the time. We've got some like great speeches and great lines. We've got some like dramatic moments and funny moments at the same time. So like enjoyability is like right there. I don't know, like all those things I thought were really great, and then like adding in the drinking game factor ability. I mean, for me, this is definitely rated worthy, especially considering like what I've seen of the snippets of the other Star Trek movies that I couldn't even finish. This definitely holds its own for me.
No, yeah, I definitely think it's a good film, and I definitely put it in the top 50% of Star Trek films. As I just said, 3 of the original cast series are about godlike creatures.
Let me ask you a different. So, if you were to put Wrath of Khan, if you were to put it in the pantheon of sci-fi movies, right, that you've seen in your lifetime, would you put it in the top 15% of the movies you've seen before? We're not talking about the most intellectual. We're just talking about
Okay, like as soon as you said that, of course, my first thought was like, okay, Back to the Future, that takes up 3 slots, and the original Star Wars trilogy takes up 3 slots, so it's like 6 already.
Okay.
Definitely top 25%, because I would say that like probably half the sci-fi I've watched has just been total garbage, like The Black Hole. But I mean, definitely top 25%. Certainly, I think when you phrase this question, is it overrated? My initial reaction was when you talk to most Star Trek fans, they will tell you, if you ask them, what's your favorite Star Trek movie? People our age and older will say Wrath of Khan. Like almost all of them, without hesitation. And I don't think that that's true. I think that The Undiscovered Country is the strongest one. It's much more fun, adventurous. That's a real science fiction, not thriller, but adventure. And so I definitely enjoy that one more. Say of the original Star Trek cast movies, that one is the strongest. But I would say top 25%.
Okay. Out of the ones that I've seen in my lifetime, I'd put it within the top 20%. And to me, that's not overrated. I feel like it's close, but I feel like I wouldn't call it overrated.
I mean, 90%, certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
If you were to give it your own percentage, if you were the aggregate, what would you give it based on just the movie itself, not on its mythos?
I would give it, B minus.
Okay.
So, 80, 82.
Okay. So I'd give it so we're not that far off. I'd give it maybe an 85, 86%.
Oh. So then how do you not feel it's overrated?
Well, I feel like 85, 86 is still very good. I just feel like it's not quite. It's close to where the 90% is, but it's not exactly where.
Right,
it is.
but 90% is an A, an A minus. But like, still.
Okay. So
I don't think it's an A. I think it's a B.
I think for the time that it was made, I would give it an A minus.
Okay, but Star Wars was made at similar time, a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But
we could poke just as many holes about that.
True.
And that's another episode.
Yeah, but certainly there's a lot of parallels between Wrath of Khan and at least The Empire Strikes Back, I felt, when I was watching it again recently. Mm-hmm. Certainly ones you could draw, you might have to stretch it a bit, but I did feel like, the whole sun thing.
So maybe we should talk about that next.
Nah.
Okay. Anyway, that's another episode of Steve and Max. I'm Steve.
I'm Max.
And see you tomorrow or whenever.
Yeah, but we might see you in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you watch another one of our videos.
Or we might see you in the past.